All right, guys, so are there any questions on problems 1 through 6? Questions on problems 1 through 6? Or any of those that you want to look at? All right, so we're looking at question number 1. Now, what we're doing on 1 through 6 is describing the transformation that occurs or as described in the function. Now, whenever we do this, we always go from left to right. So the first thing we're looking at is the 2/3. Now, the 2/3 is going to tell me that I have a vertical stretch or shrink. Now, this one here would be a shrink because the number is between 0 and 1. Now, it's not negative, so there would not be a reflection across the x-axis. So we can move on inside the parentheses. Now, since the number in front of x is 1, there's not a reflection across the y-axis or a horizontal stretch or shrink. But the -2 tells me it's moving 2 units to the right. So we have right 2. Because inside the parentheses, it's always opposite of what we think. And the +3 would be up 3. And that there would be describing the transformation. Quickly. Would be describing the transformation for this function here. Is there any others on 1 through 6 that we want to look at? Any other questions on problems 1 through 6?
I learned math today.
If there are no other questions on 1 through 6, we'll go on and move on. Huh? 6? Number 6. We have 4x squared minus 14. Now the 4 would be a vertical stretch of 4. Now because it's not inside parentheses, it would not be a horizontal shrink of 1/4. It'd be a vertical stretch of 4. And then down 14 because the -14 would be moving it down. And that's all we would need to do on this here. Any other questions on problems 1 through 6? Any questions on 7 through 10?
Can you go through 9?
Number 9. Now on these here, we want to find the vertex and axis of symmetry. Now this one here is in standard form. So the vertex is going to be the point -b over 2a, comma, f of -b over 2a.
Do like the -b over 2a, right?
Yes. So -b over 2 times a. Well, what's the value of b for this problem here? Not 6. B would be -4, and A would be 6. Because we're going based off the equation of ax squared plus bx plus c. So A is 6, B is -4, and C would be 5. Now we do need to simplify this. Well, -4 is 4. 2 times 6 is 12, so this would simplify to 1/3. So -b over 2a is 1/3.
You plug it after that.
Yes, so then we would plug it into the function to get the y value. So we'd have 6 times 1/3 squared minus 4 times 1/3 plus 5. Now at this point here, we could type this all into the calculator. And it would tell us that it's 13 over 3. So the axis of symmetry, yep. So tell me it one more time. Yep. Actually, that would be incorrect. Yes. X is equal to 1/3. Because is x equals the only axis of symmetry that we have? Do we have a different equation for it? We do have an axis of symmetry that is y equals, yes? Now, on the homework, I didn't count off if you didn't put the x equals or y equals for the axis or directrix. But on the test, I will mark off, I will count off if you do not put x equals or y equals. Because one, you should have these equations written down already, but that is a part of the answer. But that's all we have to do for this here. Any other questions on number 9? Why don't we go on and look at number 7? So what would the vertex for number 7 be? Because it's coming from our x minus h squared plus k. Now the axis of symmetry would be x equals 1. We do the exact same thing. Any other questions on 7 through 10? Questions on 11 through 16? So if we look at 11, so y is by itself, we do have the x squared, so it is set up in the correct form. Now what we need to find is the values of h, k, and p. Now what is the value of h and k? 0, 0. Because we don't have anything added in parentheses or subtracted from x in this case, and we don't have anything added on to the end. So the only thing we really need to find is the value of p. Oh, yes? 1 over 32 is equal to 1 over 4p, because that's where it lines up, because p should be somewhere in the 1/32. So we can set it equal to 1 over 4p. Since they are in the same location, they match up. Our next step is to multiply both sides by 4p. Now the 4p and 4p will cancel, which tells me that this is equal to 1. Now we will have p in the numerator, but what's 4 times 1/32? Mm-hmm. Oh. Mm-hmm. Right, because 4 over 32 would simplify to 1/8, and then we could multiply both sides by 8, which tells me that p is equal to 8. P is equal to 8. Now, I didn't ask for the vertex, but if we were asked, it would be 0, 0. The focus. Because it started off as y equals, so we could h comma h plus, or h comma k plus p, h comma k plus p. Now h is, now our k plus p would be 0 plus 8, which is 8.
I'm getting there.
Our directrix would be, now the directrix is our k minus p. So k minus p is equal to 0 minus 8, which is -8. Axis of symmetry would be x equals 0. And that's it. Yeah. Because what are we trying to find? The values of h, k, and then we plug in accordingly. Because then we plug in h, k, and p for the vertex, focus, and directrix and axis of symmetry. Yes. Any questions on this here? Number 13. We have 4x squared minus 8y equals 0. So here, we need to get the y by itself because it's the one that's not being squared. So what would we do first? to add 8y to both sides, because these would cancel. Now, it would tell me that 8y equals 4x squared. Now, I did flip the equation because I want to keep the y on the left-hand side. It makes it look a little bit nicer, because 4x squared equals 8y is going to be the same as 8y equals 4x squared. And exactly as Caleb was saying, we're going to divide both sides by 8 next, which will tell me y is equal to x squared. Because we leave the x to the side, so it really matches up with our general equation that we have. Now, we do need to find the values of h, k, and p. Now, what's h and k? 0, 0. Now, that kind of gives it away, because if we're trying to get a variable by itself, we're having to actually move things. Most likely, it's going to be 0, 0. Because have we learned how to find or set the equation up and manipulate it when the vertex wasn't 0, 0? No, because anytime the vertex wasn't 0, 0, we actually were just given the equation already set up, yes? It is possible to solve it this way, but it requires us knowing how to complete the square with quadratics. We haven't covered that yet, so we can't do it yet. But this one here, it's kind of telling us the vertex is going to be 0, 0. H and k are 0. Now, what's the value of p? Right, we need to find it. We can say 1 over 4p equals 1/2. And then what can we do next? Multiply both sides by 4p. And those would cancel, telling us 1 is equal to, which is? Divide both sides by 2. And p is equal to? Now, coincidentally, it is 1/2. But will it work out that way every single time, that the number we started out with is the same? No. It just works out that when p is 1/2, the number in front of x squared is 1/2. Because 1/2 times 4 is 2, so we're left with 1/2. Now, the vertex is 0, 0 because it's h comma k. Now, the focus for y equals is h comma k plus p. We already know the value of h. It is. Now, k plus p. Yeah, so k plus p is 0 plus 1/2, which is 1/2. Now, the directrix is, because this time we have k minus p, which would be 0 minus 1/2, which would be negative 1/2. And lastly, the axis of symmetry would be x equals I do not know off the top of my head. But looking at this here, say you got stuck and didn't know how to find p, or got stuck on finding p, and it was asking for the vertex. Highlighter. Is the vertex requiring p? No, so that's 2 points easy. Well, here it would be the x value of the focus is given to us from h and k, yes? Well, the 1/2 is dealing with p, the directrix is dealing with p, this is dealing with just h and k, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 parts of the problem. Just from having h and k, we get, I mean, that's 2/3 of the problem already done, and we don't even need p. And if you started to notice, most of this test, which is dealing with these two types of equations, with the vertex being 0, 0, and not, what are we really doing? We're finding h, k, and plugging in. Because we're either plugging it into the equation, or the vertex, directrix, focus, and axis of symmetry. Or we're taking HK and P and plugging it into the equation. Because we're going one way or the other, we just need HK and P. We have those three, and then we've got the equation or the information. Are we ready for the next one? Which one do we want to look at next? So we want to look at 15 through 19. Yes? Yes. So 16. So the focus is 0, -7. The directrix is y equals 7. Now it kind of already tells me which equation we have because, well, the directrix y equals, there's only one equation that has it, which is our y equals 1 over 4p parentheses x minus h squared plus k. Because for that equation, the directrix is y equals k minus p. And it also tells me that this here, directrix is dealing with k minus p, and the focus is dealing with h comma k plus p. What's the value of h and k? And k is? Now, it didn't directly tell me k. It did tell me h is 0, yes? But I'm saying that k plus p is equal to -7, yes? I'm also saying that k minus p is equal to 7. What's the only number that I can add or subtract from and get the same number? 0 minus 7 is -7. 0 plus 7 is 7. Because if we have any other number, say 1, well, 1 plus 7 is 1 minus 7. -6. Yes, we get two separate numbers. 0 is the only number that I can add or subtract anything from it and get back to the same number. Now, since we're subtracting from it, the sign would change, but that's it. So really, we could say k is 0. Now we just need to find the value of, well, we can say h plus p is equal to -7 from the focus, yes? Well, h is 0. Yep. So here we'll have y equals 1 over 4 times -7 parentheses x minus 0 squared plus 0. Now, if you leave it as this here and don't multiply that fraction or simplify that fraction, I will count points off because we need to simplify that. Now, 4 times -7 is going to end up -128. Now, this other side, if you leave it as x minus 0 squared plus 0, I won't count off for that. That's fine. Yeah, because x minus 0 squared is just x squared. This is it. Because I want you to simplify that part. I won't count off necessarily for leaving the -0 in parentheses. I'd prefer if you simplified it, but I will count off if you don't simplify that fraction at the beginning. Questions on this here? Any other one in 15 through 19 that y'all want to look at? We feel good with the rest of these here? Okay. If you look back at one of these here and want to, especially if looking back over it tonight and want to see another one of those done, the other 2 hours videos have another 1 or 2 of those in there, okay? So they are up there. 20 through 23, any one of those in particular? 22? Okay. So this here, we're trying to find the vertex, focus, axis of symmetry, and directrix. So they tell us the equation is x equals. So I already know the setup in those there. And the three things I need to find the values of are H, K, and P. Because we'll find those, but to find them, I need H, K, and P. What's the value of H? And where did we find that? At the end. Because with X equals, H is on the outside, K is inside. Now what's the value of K? -1. Now for this problem here, it really didn't matter because they're both -1, so even if we flipped it, we would have gotten the same thing, but we do need to be careful. Now we just need to find the value of P. Well, what's in P's place? So we can say -7 is equal to 1 over, and what can we do first? Multiply both sides by 4P. And those will cancel, telling me that -28P is equal to 1. And then we would divide both sides by -28 and get that P is equal to -128. Questions on this here? Okay, I'm going to erase this here. We good? Okay. Now, let's go down the list. Vertex is what? -1, -1. Because it's just H and K. The focus. Well, for X equals, it is H plus P, comma, K. Well, the value of K is. Now, we also have H plus P. Well, that would be -1 plus -128, which would be -1 and 1/28. Exactly, or -29 over 28. And again, we could have just plugged that into a calculator and it would have given us the answer. Now the directrix, this here is going to be X equals H minus P. For us, H minus P would be -1 minus -1/28. Well, the negative and negative would make a, so we have -1 plus 1/28, which would be, and it would be negative. And last but not least, the axis of symmetry would be y equals and that's it. Well, just finding the H and K gave us the entire vertex, half the focus, in the axis of symmetry. Really, the only thing would be missing is finding the value of P and plugging it back in. Questions on this here? We good with this problem here? Any other questions on 20 through 22? 23. 23. Any other one of those that y'all want to look at? 23. X equals -3 times y plus 3 squared plus 3. I need to change some of these where they're not, H and K are not the same. Well, this one they're technically not. What would H be? Because again, inside the parentheses, since it's X equals, it's y minus K. So the K value is inside the parentheses, H is outside. That is one thing to be paying attention to, especially when doing on the test or the homework 2.4. Yes. Now P, we need to find it, and it's going to line up with the -3 is equal to 1 over 4P. Now what can we do first? We can multiply both sides by 4p. Now the 4p and 4p will cancel, leaving us with 1. 4 times negative 3 would be. And last but not least, we would and p is equal to negative 1/12. Any questions on how we found the value of p? We go to finding the value of p. Yes? Okay. So now that we have h, k, and p, we can go on and find the rest of the information. Now the vertex is going to be what? 3 and negative 3. H is 3 and k is negative 3. So we'd have the point 3, negative 3. Our focus. And again, when we look back at the general equation for x equals, it's h plus p comma k. So the k value would be negative 3. Now we do need to find h plus p, which would be 3 plus negative 1/12, which would be 2 and 11/12, or 24, 35/12, I believe. Yes. Now the directrix would be h minus p, so that'd be 3 minus negative 1/12. Well, the negative and negative would make a plus. So 36, 37/12. And last but not least, the axis of symmetry would be y equals k, or negative 3. And it'd be this here. Any other questions on this here? So again, one of the biggest things I have is I'd make sure all those equations are written down on the review sheet, because they will not be up there tomorrow. But any other questions on this here? So ever since we passed problem number 10, what are we really finding? H, K, and then plugging it back in. Really, for all of this chapter, really what are we doing? We're finding a value for HK, or negative AB over 2A. We're finding a value that corresponds and plugging it in. And that's it, isn't it? Even for when we started, the negative B over 2A, we plugged the value of B and A in, simplified, found a number. Plugged it in, we're done. And that's a lot of this chapter. Any questions on this here? Questions on 24 through 27. 24 through 27. We can do 24. So they tell us the vertex is 7, negative 9. Well, that tells us H is, and K is. Because this is H comma K. Well, for the focus, the H value stayed the same. It's still 7, isn't it? So it's H comma K plus P. Well, that tells me that I'm going to have Y equals 1 over 4P parentheses X minus H squared plus K. So all we need to do is find the value of P. Well, it told me that K plus P is 0.5, and K is negative 9. Well, to find the value of P, I would add 9 to both sides. Those would cancel, telling me P is 2.5. I'll scroll back up. So here we would have y is equal to 1 over 4 times 2.5 times x minus h was 7 squared plus -9. Well, hopefully 1 or 4 times 2.5 will give us a whole number, and it does. 10. It would be 10. So we have 1/10 x minus 7 squared minus 9. And that's it. Now we can't drop the parentheses because x minus 7 squared really doesn't simplify easily. So we can just leave it as x minus 7 squared. Any other questions on this one here? Yes. And yeah, from the vertex to the focus, the x value changed. Because if we look at the x equals equation, the vertex is, because from the vertex to the focus for x equals, it's h and then h plus p, so we expect a change in the p value. Because we have h comma k, here we have h plus p comma k. So h we know is -4. K is 4. We want to find the value of p. It would be. Because we know that h plus p is equal to -6. H is -4. So we're saying -4 plus p is -6. If we want to do this, we would add 4 to both sides, telling me p is equal to -2. Now, if you feel comfortable with writing it in, you don't have to write it out as x equals 1 over 4p times y minus k squared plus h. If it helps you to write it out first, write it out first. Now, what's the value of p? -2. K is 4, and h is. So again, on a problem like this here, be careful which one you plug in, because on some of the worksheets that you guys turned in for 2.32, you had those flipped on both. So that's something that is not uncommon. I see it every year. It's very easy to flip those because we're too used to, we get in the habit of putting h inside the parentheses. Now for this here, 1 over 4 times -2 would be -1/8. Y minus 4 squared minus 4. And that'd be the equation. Now, after this chapter, this form of the equation for a quadratic is the last time we're going to see it. Because for this here, x equals is not a function. It is not a function. So we're just looking at it here. And after this point, we won't look at it again. Questions on this here? Are you ready for the next one? Any other questions on 26 or 27? Yeah. Now it tells me the directrix is y equals 4, yes? Well, that means that we're dealing with y equals 1 over 4p parentheses x minus h squared plus k. Because between the two equations, general equations, only one of them has a directrix of y equals. The other one is x equals. So it kind of tells me exactly which one we have. Well, I've got the value of h and k. H is -6 and k is 6. Now the directrix for this one here is going to be what? K minus p. Well, it's telling me k minus p is equal to 4, yes? What's the value of k? 6? Please tell me y'all can do this in your head. Because what, -6 is 4? 2? Yeah. Because we can go on and do the steps out, because we can subtract 6 from both sides. Well, that would be -2, wouldn't it? Well, on the other side, we have p equals 2. Yeah. Because 6 minus 2 is 4. All right. Any questions on how we found HK and P? X minus -6 would be x plus 6 plus 6. And when we simplify this, we would get 1/8 times x plus 6 squared plus 6. And that's it. So really on these here, we're just finding the values of HK and P and then plugging it back in. Any questions on this here? Let's look at 28 through 31. Is there one of those in particular that y'all want to look at? Yeah. And why don't we do 30 and 32? Because I do have 28 and 29 included in both of the other videos. Now, 28 gives us a vertex and a point. So we're going to be dealing with y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. What's h? It is 4/3, and k is 2/5. So we can start off by taking the general equation and plugging h and k in. Now the only thing we're missing from this equation is a, because if I have a, I actually have the equation and we're done. So we're going to utilize the other point, 0, 178/45, and plug it in. So 178 over 45 is equal to a times 0 minus 4/3 squared plus 2/5. So we're just plugging x and y into the equation. Now at this point here, we can do 0 minus 4/3 in parentheses squared and let the calculator figure that out for us. Now if we did it by hand, well, 0 minus 4/3 is just -4/3. If we square it, well, the 4 squared would be 16, the 3 squared would be 9, and it'd be multiplied by a. Now it's going to be positive because anytime we square a number, it's always positive. If it's negative squared, it's positive. If it's positive, it's going to stay positive. Plus 2/5. Well, what do we do next? Minus 2/5 from both sides. Now we can do this in a calculator because we can't leave it as 2/5. We would actually have to get the denominators to be the same, because they'd both need to be 45. There's 18 because if we did in a calculator, it would probably give us something close to this here, but not quite. As 45 and 160 are both divisible by 5. Any number that ends in 0 or 5 is divisible by 5. 9 times 5 is 45. 32 times 5 actually works out to be 160.
I think we did, but I did it by 16 on time.
Or we can multiply it by 9 over 16. Because here, if we multiply straight across, well, the 9 and 9 would cancel. The 16 and 16 would cancel, leaving us with 1a. So all that would cancel out if we multiply by its reciprocal, which would give us a. Incidentally enough, a 9 and 9 would, and 32 divided by 16 is 2. That equals 2. Yep, so y equals 2, parentheses, x minus 4/3 squared plus 2/5. For as ugly decimals as they are, we came out with a very nice a value. Questions on this one here? Let's look at the last one. It tells us that the x-intercepts are -6 and 7. Well, we also know if they gave us 2 points, because -6, 0 and 7, 0, those are also x-intercepts. Because the value of y at the x-intercept will always be 0. So this here we're using the general equation. Y is equal to a times x minus p times x minus q. So we can plug p and q in. Well, -6 is going to be plus, because x minus -6 is the same as x plus 6. Yes? And then we're going to have x minus 7. Well, just like the last problem, we're going to plug in our point into this here to find the value of a. So we're saying that -270 is equal to a times 4 plus 6 times 4 minus 7. Now, if you type all this here into the calculator, because again, two numbers being multiplied together, we can type that in. Or if we did it by hand, well, 4 plus 6 is 10. 4 minus 7 is that would be -30. Because 10 times -3 would be -30. Divide both sides by -30. So y equals 9 times x plus 6 times x minus 7. And that right there would be the equation of the parabola. Yes. So that is it on the review sheet. Again, tomorrow is your test, so make sure any of the assignments you do not have finished, you get them finished up and turned in by the end of the day tomorrow.